What I love about Warnie, he's never pretended to be any different than what he is. He's the genuine article all the time.
He wanted people around him to succeed, and that's the thing that stays with me. Anybody that he met, he wanted them to succeed.
And the thing that I loved about him, as good as he was on the cricket field, he was 5 times better off it.
He was the most generous person, but not just generous in what he would give you, but he had time. When you think of everyone that he knew and everything that he did, he always made time for people if you were a mate of his.
Just so loyal. If he said he was going to do something, he always delivered.
He's just left us, a flood of memories and such great times, and just a great bloke to have in your cricket team and to enjoy company away from cricket as well.
The people that don't know him think he is the way he is because of what he did in Test cricket, but it's the reverse. He did what he did because of the way he is. He's just a super bloke, and I feel sorry for the people around Australia that never met him.
He made slow bowling fashionable again. He made it cool.
The public loved him. He was fresh, the blonde hair, and something different. Something different the game hadn't seen in a while. A leg spinner that was a prodigious turner of the ball, a match-winning player.
Everything about Warnie was big, even back then. So people got on board because he was a character.
Big appeal, and he's gone! Got him! Shane Warne is absolutely delighted. Facing Warne. Bowled him round his legs! That's good enough. I'm afraid that's easily good enough for Shane Warne.
Oh, that's off the edge. Warne takes the catch, and the Test match is all over.
Shane played it as hard as any cricketer I've ever known on the field. He would make a cricket field the least hospitable place there is. Mental disintegration from him.
He's done it again. He's a magician, this man.
What he had, of course, was A, fantastic accuracy, and B, and this is what I think marked him out as the best bowler or best spinner that I played against, was a fantastic cricket brain. He could work batsmen out very quickly, work out situations very quickly, and he was a wonderful competitor.
Well, Shane Warne wins that battle and wins it with ease.
He's the ultimate competitor, loves it out in the middle, and I don't think there's ever been anyone like him.
He went hard at you on the field, never went over the top, but he was the first one to come and congratulate you. When you did well, if you scored runs against him, no matter who it was, he was the first one up shaking your hand as you walked off or coming into your dressing room to do it.
He obviously understood the game very well, understood his own game very well, but more importantly, he actually understood batsmen better than most bowlers that I ever captained. He almost had another sense as to what the batsman was going to do, or certainly what the batsman was thinking, and therefore he could apply what he had to do to always stay a step ahead of the batsman.
Oh, there's a big appeal there, and that is out.
He loved the battle. He loved competition. He loved being over to you, Shane. You have to keep us in this Ashes series.
Oh, there's a big appeal, and Warne is on a hat-trick. Goff's gone first ball.
That's what he was made for. That's what he wanted to be all the time. Centre stage, win this game for us.
Here we go. He's out! He's got him! Warne's taken a hat-trick!
Oh, he bowled him.
This man is incredible.
In the air, gone. Quarter to an extra, and 5 wickets to Shane Warne. And there it is, a great victory for Australia and a tremendous day's work for Shane Warne.
All of a sudden this one comes out of the blue, and there are times in your career where you think you've done everything right and you still get out.
The ball before, he had bowled a long up, which I cut for 4, and I was quite happy with myself, thinking, yep, we've heard a lot about him, but if that's how he's going to bowl, then it's not too much to worry about. And then next ball, he bowled what I thought was another long hop, but before I realised it wasn't, my off stump had been knocked back.
He changed games, he emptied bars, he's box office.
And a few used to call him Hollywood, it was under the lights, it was bigger than Ben-Hur, and there was always a show on.
He's probably been the biggest thing to hit Australian cricket since Lillian Thompson.
Leg spin is the hardest art to master, and he did that. It's pure theatre, and he played to the crowd, he played to the situation. and he loved it. But it was box office stuff.
At the top of the bowling mark, that's where the theatre began, and it really was a stage performer on his stage, in his place of comfort, and you just went along for the journey.
But he also developed this aura, and I think the Australian team in that era was an amazing team to be part of, and there was a certain aura around the team, and Warnie, was up there at the top of it.
When he had a hold on you, and he knew he had a hold on you, he would constantly be at you. There would be no let up.
He became very clever at inventing deliveries. We all knew that he had about 2 deliveries, but by the end of it he had about 14. Just the psychological warfare he used to play on players, while we're out in the middle.
So I think early on there was no bluff at all, and I think as his career wore on, he got smarter, and he also got that experienced side to him that, okay, I might not be turning it right to left as much as I used to, but I'll make the batsman think that I've got the mystery ball and that I'm working on another one that I might just produce. So very clever.
He had that psychological edge, he had that persona, he had the body language, he had the chirp, he had that ability to make batsmen feel very small.
Try not to play Shane Warne, the person, the aura, the superstar, the iconic player. Just try and play the ball.
Yeah, we probably paid him too much respect in the fact that we would just stay in our crease, we were overcautious, and we just played into his hands, so he could almost toy with us.
He could always bowl you a ball that you couldn't prepare for. He'd always produce a bit of magic, and every time Australia were under the pump, you always felt that he was the man, he was the one who would always get them back into a match.
He never gave up. He always believed he could do something, and he was always looking at things from a positive point of view.
He didn't see himself as a great. He was a down-to-earth sort of lad that happened to be really good at bowling leg spin.
He's one of the greatest cricketers of all time. I've got no doubt about that.
Wonderful bowling from Shane Warne. What a cricketer this man is.
There will never be another Shane Warne. He was the best leg spinner ever and changed the way that cricket has been viewed.
He's once-in-a-generation bowler.
For me, was the best bowler, spin bowler I ever faced, and I think probably others would say the same.
700 for Shane Warne. What a way to get there.
I don't think there's been a cricketer that has had the same impact, on the game as Shane Warne has had.
Not just bowlers, all the cricketers I've ever played against or watched, I'd have him right at the top of the tree. I'd have him at number one, the greatest cricketer of my era.
He left a hole in world cricket, which I don't think will ever be filled.
This man is incredible.
Shane Warne, I think, is arguably the greatest cricketer that's ever played.
The art of leg spin was dying a little bit before Shane Warne came back on the scene, and I think what he brought to the game in that period he played is virtually irreplaceable. There'll be other spinners and other cricketers, but there was only one Shane Warne.
Great memories of a great bowler and a wonderful friend of ours, Shane Warne. Just a little news from the middle is that the covers are starting to be unrolled by the ground staff, so the news is slightly better. The floodlights are on. It seems to have stopped raining. Going to have a little bit of a delay, obviously, but fingers crossed that won't be too far away. It's a good opportunity then to talk about Shane. It's the 29th anniversary today of the great Gatting ball, Mark Taylor, which you had a bird's eye view of. What are your memories of that?
But my first memory is it doesn't feel like 29 years ago. But yeah, I did have obviously a great spot to watch that ball from. And I just remember a fairly young Shane Warne who was, making his way in Test match cricket at the time. He'd had an excellent series against the West Indies in Australia, even though we lost that series 2-1. Warnie took 7 for in Melbourne, and I think that was the moment he sort of announced himself on the world stage that, hey, I can get quality batsmen out and bowl Australia to victory. So then we come to England in 93, and Old Trafford, and Athens, you've lived there a long time, it was a bit greasy, it was a bit cool. There was discussion about whether we'd play May or Warne, whether we'd play a whole heap of fast bowlers. Warne gets the nod, and I don't remember him sort of champing at the bit to get the ball, but when he got it, he bowls this ball out of nowhere that I think, to be frank, I think surprised him as much as it did Mike Gatting. It was just the perfect delivery, the big dipping in swing and then rips across his body and flicks the top of off stump. Perfect.
And what people wouldn't remember or might have forgotten, before that, he'd gone to Worcester. Your opening tour game was at Worcester, where Graham Hick had absolutely marmalised him, taking him for about 180 or something. So it wasn't as though we were expecting anything special from this young leg spinner. We really didn't know anything about him.
My recollection was that there was talk at the time that England were going to put out dry pitches. You were going to beat us. I think you had Peter Such, Tuffers. You were going to spin us out. That was the call for that summer.
That went well. Nasser, let's bring you in. You're in the third man's chair there. You got a bit of footage for us to have a look back at that delivery.
Well, the whole country is saying, instead of waffling on about how good he was, can we have a look at the delivery 29 years later? And we will have a look just to see if Gat eventually lays a bat on it. And he doesn't. I mean, the replay, and Mark's spot on with the drift. It's the drift that does you every time. He basically bowls an in-swinger there. So you turn it to leg. Look at Healy going down the leg side. Tubby suddenly appears in shot at slip as if he knew exactly what he was going. What was the reaction in the dressing room? We've heard Mark's reaction. What was the reaction, do you think, in the England dressing room, not just that day, but then for years to come after that delivery?
Well, I was in the dressing room because I was already out, inevitably. We were one down and Gat was in at 3 and Gooch was there with him. I don't remember there being a kind of shocked reaction, as I say, because we really weren't expecting anything, and then suddenly that happened. But I think gradually then, over the next game or two, we became very aware that there was something special in the Australian team at that point. I mean, the drift is the thing. Where does this drift come from, Tubbs? Is it just the amount of spin that he puts on the ball? You mentioned yesterday how strong his hands are and those fingers, and he really gave it a rip. Is that where that drift comes from?
Well, I'm not a physicist. I don't really know, but it must have something to do with the rotation of the ball and the drive that he often talked about, getting through the crease, using the front arm to drive down as he let the ball go. Warney would talk about that to spinners a lot, about all this adds to the momentum of you, and therefore that momentum almost transfers to the ball. That gives you the pace of the ball, and obviously his fingers and the wrist give it the rotation. Get all that right, for some reason the ball then tends to drift into you as a right-hander, and then obviously spins away.
What's noticeable, Nas, is how low Shane Warne's arm is there, so that enables him to get that side spin and maybe drift on the ball. You've been looking a little bit at the contrast between Shane Warne, the position of his arm, Matt Parkinson, other leg spinners as well, like Anil Kumble and Mushtaq. Not everybody bowls from that kind of lowish position.
No, they don't. And Mark's right again, in as much as Shane always used to get cross up here when we used to talk about the breeze. We say our perfect breeze for a bit of drift for Moeen Ali or Graham Swan. He was like, Nas, it's about the revs you get on the ball. The more revs you get on the ball, that is a sign that's when you're going to get drift. But you're right, looking at that footage, and I heard you and Mark talking about it at the back of the box when you came in this morning about how low Shane's arm is. And I heard Mark yesterday when we were going off air talking about Parkinson just going past the perpendicular. So I tried to do a triple split screen. And this is, again, nothing I heard you in the middle about talking about Matt Parkinson this morning. We've got to give this lad some time. Bowling leg spin is not easy. But there are 3 leg spinners. Shane with that lower front arm, bowling arm rather. What would that be, about 11 o'clock? Anil Kumble, who was a completely different leg spinner, right up at 12 o'clock. And Matt Parkinson there on the right, just past the perpendicular, as the great Richie Beno used to say. So just for Mark, who used to captain him and know him well, and our second best leg spinner in the Combox now, Michael Atherton, just analyse those 3 actions and what are the strengths and weaknesses, really.
I mean, it's quite interesting looking at Kumble there, because he was an outstanding leg spinner as well. And it just shows that although they both bowl wrist spin, Warne and Kumble, 2 of the great wrist spinners, they were very different type of bowler. Kumble was much quicker, much higher arm, didn't spin it as much as Warne because his arm was much higher, and he bowled with much more overspin. Now, my recollection of facing both of them is that you'd say Warne was a greater bowler in all conditions, but actually, if you were playing on a Turner in India, say, actually the pace that Kumble bowled made him a really tricky proposition.
I would call Kumble more of a slow bowler. He was a bounce bowler, tall man, I don't know, 6'3", maybe 6'4". Kumble, obviously Warne kept telling us he was 6'2", but he was about 5'10".
6'2" in heels.
Yeah, which he wore a bit. But Kumble was a bounce bowler, so he used his height very well. I said yesterday the one thing that I would work on with Parkinson would be to try and get his head up a little bit more when he bowls. You look at Kumble, he's got his head right up because he wants to maximise his height and his bounce. He didn't rotate the ball anywhere near as much as, say, Warne on the left, but he used his height and bowled a bit quicker. And as Athers said a moment ago, on a pitch that turned, Kumble was extremely difficult to place because it would give him a bit of side spin, but he'd have a bit more pace and bounce on the ball. Very tough to play on slow pitches.
Also meant that Kumble found the googly easier to bowl. The higher your arm, the easier it is to flick it over the back. And Shane, he bowled his googly, but he didn't bowl it a lot, did he? And particularly after the shoulder went in 98, it was a delivery he almost put to one side. He would only roll it out occasionally just to let the batsman know that he still had it in his armoury.
He didn't have. I don't think he ever really had a great wrong at Warne. He had that magnificent flipper, which he sort of flipped out like that, and he had the skidder, which he talked about, which was really what he hoped would fool batsmen because it wasn't his leg spinner that did that. He'd almost just push it out the front like that, and it would skid on. But he did when he bowled his wrong, and it was quite easy to pick. So, as you say, he didn't use it very often, and he only used it, as you say, Athers, to say to the batsman, look, I've got it if I need it, but he very rarely needed it.
Nas, at 15, you were the best young leg spinner in the country, bizarrely, now to think of it. You actually lost it a little bit, didn't you? You started to grow. You suddenly had a bit of a growth spurt and couldn't quite land it as you did. But the process of nurturing young leg spinners is quite hard from a captaincy, parental, coaching perspective. You have to be prepared to give leg spinners time and be aware that it's not an easy art and they're going to bowl a bit of filth from time to time.
Absolutely. I mean, we did bowl some filth between us, by the way. We opened the Bowling England under-15s against Scotland, a pair of us bowling leg spin, and we got the yips. I got the yips more than you. You keep reminding us of your 2 Test wickets, Vengsarkar and Wasim Akram, I think they were. But I completely got the yips. I had a growth spurt, so the trajectory was completely different. You know, it was chaos. And then suddenly you had to work on your batting. But captaincy, and it's another thing Shane used to speak about a lot up here, was captaincy of young leg spin, especially in England, and especially I do a bit of coaching at school, and your little dobber bowls 4 overs, 1 for 3, and the team are going nowhere. It's got wet ball, it's cold, and you bowl it, and the spinner goes for 10 in their first over. What does the captain do straight away? And you have to look at yesterday's conditions. You know, seam is dominating, you've called up a young leg spinner. What do you do as a captain? Do you trust your leg spinner? And really, I shouldn't be talking about this because the bloke who captained the greatest leg spinner of all time, how did you captain him? And in general, leg spin.
Warne, in a way, was not hard to captain because he was so good. I was saying to Athers early on Sky Sport News an hour or so ago that I thought Ben Stokes had a pretty good day yesterday, captaining Matt Parkinson, because he gave him opportunities. As you say, Nas, the danger of captaining anyone is not giving them opportunities. And after he'd bowled 6 overs, he didn't bowl them bad. I think he had none for 21 from his first 6, but didn't really look like taking a wicket. It would have been easy not to use him again, but he tried him again from the pavilion. And then I was delighted when he swung him around and bowled him here from our commentary box or the nursery end of the ground, because it gave him another opportunity. So I thought Ben Stokes yesterday had a good day, giving him opportunities and more or less saying, I think you're good enough. And that's what you need to do as a skipper, and it needs to happen at a very young level, because if you don't, you lose people like the Parkinsons or the Warnes who eventually get to the age of 18 or 19 and they're doing something else rather than buying leggies.
We've done a lot of footage about Shane the cricketer and Shane the broadcaster. What was Shane the person like on a cricket field? As in, did he ever doubt himself? Did he ever come up to you, Mark, and say, do you know what, it's just not coming out well today, you know, don't pick me? Or did he have that complete confidence all the time?
Oh, no, it definitely wasn't that confident. He nearly always wanted to play, nearly always wanted to bowl. I can remember the West Indies was 95 when we finally beat the West Indies. It was a landmark series for Australian cricket. And Warnie played a big part in that. Even though he didn't take any more wickets than, say, McGrath or Brendan Julian, Paul Rifle was the other man in our attack. But Warnie was pivotal because we had a slow bowler that they didn't have. And in that series, a couple of things I can recall. Once he didn't want to play at St Kitts in a lead-up game. I made him play because I didn't think he was bowling that well and he was dirty with me. I then bowled him for 4 overs. He took 2 for 12. I said, I'm sorry, you were right, don't need to bowl anymore, so I'll take you off. He said, you're not taking me off, I'm here to bowl. And he took 5 for. So that tells you about Shane Warne. The last test, he had a badly bruised thumb, and we're playing Jamaica 1-1 in that series, the deciding test match. Warnie was really iffy about whether he should play or not because his thumb was quite bad. He got hit batting. But I put my arm around him and said, mate, we need you. And he said, yeah, I'm going to play. And as I said, the last wicket, I think, I actually caught Kenny Benjamin at first slip, one of the easiest catches I took in my life, bowled by Shane Warne. And I thought that just summed him up. We needed him. He played. We won that test and won the series. First time we've beaten the Windies for 20 years.
Stuart Broad out in the middle, just to let you know that play will resume at 11:30, so that's good news. The rain has come and gone, and one or two of the players out warming up in the middle. New Zealand leading by 227, so the cricket should be good when we get there. What about the batsman who played him well, Tubbs? He used to say that Sachin Tendulkar was the best player of his generation, Daylight second, Brian Lara third. Were the two players that played him best of all, do you think?
Yeah, certainly Brian comes to mind. I'd say another guy, Salim Malik, the Pakistan captain. Not almost the most liked player in world cricket around that time, but Salim played him particularly well. I think in '94 Pakistan was my first tour as a captain, and I thought we played really, really good cricket on that tour. We lost the series 1-0 and probably had the better of it, but they won the first test by a wicket, and the next two we couldn't bowl them out a couple of times because Salim made lots of runs. I think he made 500 runs in that series, and he's one of the few series where I played a deep point to Warnie because he read his length so well, and he cut him a lot more than I'd seen any other batsman because he picked up his length so quickly. And so I had to put a deep point in. And I didn't do that much during my captaincy time with Warnie.
What about speeds, lads? Because, a lot of talk yesterday about the speed of Parkinson and he's bowling a bit slowly. I guess you're a product of your environment. Matt Parkinson bowling at Old Trafford on a pitch that's generally quick and has bounce. He has grown up bowling at that 45.8 mile per hour. He averages 23 in first-class cricket, gets wickets. On the other end, you've got Yasir Shah at 52 miles an hour. Now, he bowls and is brought up on some slow, low Pakistan pitches, so he has to bowl it quicker. Shane was around about 49 mile an hour. Shane famously said about Monty Panesar, I don't know exactly what the test number was. He said Monty hasn't played a dozen test matches. He's played the same test a dozen times. So was Shane someone that was aware of his speeds and tried to change it with conditions? And how easy is that for someone like Parkinson? Now that he's in the side, you can't suddenly be changing him. You know, he's brought up bowling one way. Do you change him or do you make him bowl quicker?
I don't think you can change him, but it's something he'll need to learn. He'll need to develop bowling quicker on certain surfaces. You're right. The slower the surface, generally the quicker you've got to bowl. Not always, but generally. I look at Warnie, say, at the Gabba. That was one of his best venues. The Gabba's not really known for being a great venue for leg spin bowling, yet Warnie loved it because it was a quick pitch and it bounced. So he would bowl slower there than, say, at the SCG, which was a slower, lower surface, so he'd bowl a little bit quicker. They're the subtle variations that I think you only learn by obviously having a good arsenal to be able to bowl different deliveries, but also the knowledge of what pace to bowl on certain pitches. And it's something that Parkinson will learn as he goes through his journey of playing first class and Test cricket.
It was said after Shane Warne that he would inspire a new generation of leg spinners in Australia. It hasn't really happened, has it? Is that a measure of just how difficult the art is and how good he was,
that, you know, a whole host and a new generation of leg spinners hasn't really come through.
I think that's a very fair point. It's not that easy. And Warnie would have said that many a times on Sky Sports here. It's not an easy art to do. And I think it also, as Nasser alluded to a moment ago, it is incumbent on captains to try and use their spin bowls as often as they possibly can. And it goes back to school cricket level. If you don't bowl them, they won't bowl. They'll end up becoming, particularly with T20 cricket, they'll end up being a slow bowler rather than a leg spin bowler who wants to hit the ball. To be a really good leg spinner, particularly a first-class leg spinner, you've got to be able to spin the ball. And you've got to be able to work batsmen out, how to get them out, without them having to be looking to belt you over the top. A lot of T20 cricket now, leg spinners are great because batsmen have to go after, have to score 8-9 runs and over. Warnie was brilliant because he could get batsmen out who weren't looking to score. And that's when you are a great slow bowler or a great leg spin bowler.
So who have you got? Zampa and Swepson right now, isn't it, in Australia? And Zampa really more of a white ball one-day leg spinner. The hopes for anybody else on the horizon for Test cricket?
I can't think of one straight off the bat, no, but Swepson's more of a leg spin bowler, one who's looking to get people out, whereas Zampa now really has gone to that T20 cricketer. He needs the batsman to get after him.
Fascinating, and of course all on the back of Shane Warne. We're going to take a short break, live action after the